Alrighty, welcome to episode 251 of Backpacking America. Today I have a guest. His name is Raja Deen. He is a kind of an expert on artificial intelligence, and he also talks about news and international politics. So he's right at home here at Backpacking America. He's also a fan. Um, so welcome, Raja. It's great to have you.
Of course. Really glad to be here. I was really
Brilliant.
happy to get the invite and just be able to, just kick it with you, man.
Dude, yeah, I love having my fans on, bro. And it seems like you know a lot of cool stuff. And we actually had a nice little discussion about artificial intelligence in our DMs. And it's actually kind of funny because today too, I was scrolling right before this, and you know how you see all those people on TikTok Live. Well, today I ran into a girl, and she's not the first one that does AI live streams where they're like, "Thank you for the rose," and I'm like, are you good, bro? Like, what the fuck is this? So, that's something that really freaks me out. So, for those of you that don't know, like, AI lives on TikTok are basically regular ass people that pretend to be an AI robot, and guys and girls get off to it, and they give them money and donate, and all they have to do is just sit there like a mindless robot. Um, it's kinda scary because, I mean, it takes that type of I already have critiques of that type of work, like, on this show, but my biggest concern is that people are gonna start emulating AI because they're gonna feel that the AI is the perfect form of communication, both sexually and platonically, and now people are gonna try and mimic AI. So that's something that concerns me. I don't know if if you see it the same way, but I'd be interested to get your take on it.
Oh, for sure. I think it's one of those things where you sometimes question, is the human race actually heading towards a more dystopian type of lifestyle
Mm.
where people are kind of just living to just get the day over with and being able to rely on their, hormonal impulses? Or are they actually trying to live a life where they want to better themselves, actually make something out of it? And, including not just the social capital that you bring into this country, but the physical capital, right? That's also a huge aspect of this. And one interesting thing, very interesting thing regarding this AI girl phenomenon. We keep seeing a pattern of where technology has a massive overreach. And its massive overreach not only alienates people, but it alienates individuals from each gender. If you notice with this whole AI craze and everyone that's going crazy about, oh, I love these TikTok lives, I think they're so awesome. The majority of it is really just making it harder for most male female relations, not just in person, but also in technology.
Hmm.
People enter the Instagram app or they enter TikTok app and they see things such as, oh, kill all men, or oh, all men are bad, or as we see right now with this current Barbie movie, right? People are saying, oh, Barbie was the best, blah, 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 blah. Ken's a terrible guy. What he did was terrible. I mean, I don't mean to be that guy, but it's one of those things where if you look at societies led typically by a female majority versus a male majority, you see a huge drastic difference in terms of, the degree of progress, the degree of emphasis held towards STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, as well as an emphasis towards infrastructure and being able to build something greater than yourselves. There's not a lot of belief nowadays in the youth where they think, I can make something bigger. I can make something better. I can become innovative. I can help out my family. I can do something that will strengthen my own bloodline, right? And this AI girl craze and what they're doing right now with the lives, you see celebrities right now pushing it. I don't know if you were aware of this, but did you see that Timberland, the famous producer rapper? He actually was one of the biggest people actually pushing this whole AI girl live thing.
Really? Why?
Swear to God, that one, the one mixed African American lady, the one who goes, "Ice cream so good." That
Oh,
lady,
that was so
he actually
stupid. Yeah.
donated about like I think about $3,000, $4,000 to her.
See, that's insane. And you brought up an interesting point earlier where you said something about um there's a divide with like the all men are bad type of deal on the internet. And there's a strong like bias towards especially white people too. Like there was a post I saw on Facebook today. I got in an argument with some
Hundred
random
percent
lady.
agreed. 100% agreed. Preach.
Dude, yeah, well, I was on Facebook and they said there was a app. I was in part of this meme group. It was for Marxists and stuff. And I'm looking through it and It's a list of a historical database of sundown towns, but it made it seem like those sundown towns were still active today. And one of them was like where I live. And I was like, man, this ain't no sundown town. I live here. My neighbors are Colombians and Muslims. I mean, what the fuck, what the fuck is this? I'm like, "What the hell? Like, what?" Like, I just saw, like, 3 black people down the street, like, fixing their quads, and, I'm an Italian, we get lynched too in a sundown town, so I'm like, "What the fuck?"
It's true. That's
And
true.
and there was this black trans lady that was like, you're not black." And I'm like, you don't live here." And then this other one was like, "Well, historically, it was because there was the German gardens." So where I live in Yaphank, there's this place called, German Gardens, and it's like 45 houses in a cul-de-sac owned by the German American Bund, which is now the German American Resettlement League, and they used to have Nazi rallies there in the 30s and 40s. But they're basically calling it a sundown town because of those 30 or 40 houses that are in an isolated community off a
That
private
is
road,
so ridiculous.
and now they're casting the shadow on the entire town that historically no one liked them being there. So it's just kind of like you're shitting on a whole town, making it seem like it's still a sundown town when, nowadays no one even knows about that place or doesn't like that it still exists. So I really don't it's someone and I'm like, "Yo, I live here." And the lady was like, "Well, I'm gonna go with, the shared experiences of black people as opposed to white people like you." I'm like, "What the fuck?" It's like, and this is the thing too, is that like a lot of this shit also exists in terminally online culture. But the problem is that everyone's so glued to their phones that it's easy to get influenced by it. So yes, it is like a terminally online thing to be like, oh my god, like, non-white people are like that type of thing that I just explained, or like what you were explaining with the Barbie thing or the TikTok live thing, like, it's a very terminally online thing, but at the same time, it's causing such an effect to those that may be on the app for 10 minutes a day. It's still that pervasive,
Agreed,
so it's like,
100%.
is it
It
is it
ends up
really
adding up
terminally
to
online?
a mental block, I would say. It ends up adding more to a mental roadblock within individuals where
Mm,
their own motivation, their own, goals, their own inspiration that comes to them in the whole day to day, it kind of gets attacked. It really does. And the reason why is because being able to attack normal things that we as humans are normally meant to do, for example, reproduce, have families, have good relations with the other gender, aka female. There's no other gender out there besides male and female.
yeah,
And basically being able to just be a decent human being and see that change is not only a necessary thing in society, but that it exists, right? You see people still nowadays who are Native American citizens, people who are literally born here, raised here, etc., and they will go left and right to go claim victim mentality or victim mindset whenever they can if it comes to an excuse for not being able to do something or not wanting to go push themselves. Or one major thing too, not going to the gym, right? Not being able to, go outside and say, hey, I want to do physical exercise. Hey, I want to go outside and go better my own body, right? This is such a major thing because people don't underestimate how important it is to actually have a fully functioning body, to have a proper society where both genders are integrated, but also actually love each other. One interesting stat that I just found the other day, which actually one of my friends told me about today, he was like, "Dude, you really got to cover this at 6 p.m. when you're talking," and I was like, "All
hell
right,
yeah.
sure." And that was pretty interesting. A new study reveals young male virginity is on the rise. Over 50% of men between 18 to 20 are virgins. For men over age 25, but not older than 30, only 1.9% are virgins according to data psychology. To
Hmm,
be completely honest with you, we as animals, right? We are living organisms. We are literally meant to be on this earth to not only become the best we possibly can be, but to reproduce, to go pass on to the next generation, right?
mhm.
The fact that there's so much technology and there's so much of a divide now where people feel so scared to be able to talk about something such as politics or talk about situations in their community, issues that are plaguing us, things like that, just because they have a label of a race or a demographic or a group of people, it is so mindless because that's not how real life works. Real life means you have to actually pinpoint a problem, understand where the underlying problem comes from, and typically where that underlying problem comes from, it either comes from a thing, a person, or a group of people. People
Right.
can say, "Oh, what do you mean by group of people?" But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of situations where in different societies, sometimes groups of people get attacked, right? You can decide whether or not it's justified or not. But at the end of the day, there are groups of people that are always behind it and always saying, hey, listen, we call the shots. We want things to run X, Y, and Z, right? And
Mm.
it all stems back to technology and how we as humans not only abuse it, but we allow others to abuse it as well.
It's also interesting because, you look at, I actually did a study on this myself. I wrote a paper about it. And I, it never got published because, well, that's an NDA problem right there. But anyway, like in the paper, I wrote that, male suicide is actually on par, it actually exceeds female suicide. And when you look at
That's
the
true.
racial makeup of it, white men and I believe Native Americans, white men are the number one group of men, and Native Americans right behind them that commit suicide at greater rates than any of the other races. But black men and black women are on par committing suicide at the same rates. And it's actually quite disturbing when you look at it because it's like, oh, white men are the problem, blah blah blah. But then we're the ones killing ourselves the most. So it's kind of like, why is that? If we're so privileged and everything's great, why are we killing ourselves at like a higher rate? And
Great point.
there's
And if you don't mind me butting in, I
yeah.
think one major thing as well that also comes into play, just regarding society, how we view gender roles, how gender roles are meant to actually work.
Mhm,
One major contributor to not only Caucasian male suicide, and also you can also even bring up Asian male suicide too, because they're trying to bring it up in many aspects,
mhm.
is trying to push transgenderism. I think it's one of the biggest ills, one of the biggest poisons to our society. I completely understand pluralism of races, being able to understand that we all come from different demographics. We're all human beings, but we all have different backgrounds. That technically also means biological and genetic as well. But the idea of basically being able to defy God, to defy science itself, and say, I don't even want to have a PP anymore. I just want to have a slit inside, in between my legs, right? How can someone say that and not realize that's not only hurting themselves, but it's essentially taking themselves out of the gene pool? There's currently been a lot of buzz at the moment where there's people that are coming out about talking about detransitioning, about how
Yes.
they did not like being the other gender, and it's really sad because you see a lot of these people end up being Caucasian, and then you wonder, and then you think to yourself, wow, maybe they've been pushing this the whole time because they just don't want people to reproduce. Like maybe they're just doing this more so as a soft core eugenics position in order to basically take people out of the gene pool. It's a really sad thing to think about because people don't like bringing up these types of words. But at the end of the day, it definitely has a huge impact because you see it inside of the overall American population. They're predicting that about, I believe, around 2026, 2028, that the transgender population of just people over the age of 18 is going to go from like 7% to like over 14%.
Wow, really?
And
It's
it's
being
bad
pushed.
because these people that end up being transgender, the majority of them are never going to reproduce. They'll never have kids,
Well, yeah,
right?
all the chemical poisoning and stuff. I mean, the thing is
And
too,
in
it's
some
like,
states, such as California, some criminals are actually getting away scot free by saying they want to change their gender. That's completely bullshit. If you killed somebody and you say, I want a vagina now, that should not be able to get yourself to be excluded from facing a punishment. You should be able to be tried and face the punishment as your biological
well,
gender.
why wouldn't they face a punishment if they were decided to transition? Wouldn't they still be?
Because they're able to use the insanity plea and they could say that, oh, I actually wasn't in the right mindset, get a really good lawyer or a good public defender,
But
and then
doesn't
say,
that
I
go
want to
in the
transition.
doesn't that fly in the face though of what those states are trying to push because they're trying to say that transgenderism is not a mental illness, it was taken off the DSM. So wouldn't
But they
that
don't want you to know that. That's the issue. You even look at people, for example, such as Chelsea Manning, right? The
okay?
person who infamously dated Grimes, I think a former soldier, and became
Yes.
transgender. If I'm not mistaken, these people are able to get away with things such as whistleblowing, touching children, murder, who knows, rape, for freaking God's sake, and they're able to do it because of the insanity plea. It's one of those
Yeah.
terrible things that exists in American law. But when you couple that with the newfound transgenderism, it just causes a really terrible type of impact that people don't take into account.
Mm.
It's so much worse because these people not only will they live in society, but they're basically hermits, right? So they're gonna basically stay in the shadows, lurking, 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 until they find their next target. You see this as we saw Brian Koberger, who was that serial killer all the way out in Idaho, and then we got this new guy in Long Island, Gilgo Beach murders. I mean,
Mm.
these are things where people underestimate. There's humans out there that act like slugs that are waiting to basically take out another person, right? Another target, inside their life, and it's not focused on enough because if we want to have a truly moral, truly just, truly profound and important society, you need to take out those people. By take them out, I mean literally physically put them into a system where they have no way of being able to reach the outside world, and they are trapped in that system.
Well, the thing is too, it's also finding, who would qualify for such a thing, and I feel that, like, you know, this is where kinda AI, kinda to bring it back, like, you know, comes in a negative way. It's like, how is this gonna be used in the prisons to suppress people? And, also, like, when it comes to the counter of, when it comes to transgenderism, I really feel that, like, personally, I don't care what someone does with their body. I just don't think children should be able to decide without parental consent, what happens. And I
That's the issue, right? You talk to a lot of people that are either former transitioners or they might be detransitioning at the moment, and typically a lot of the reasons why they stem to the reason why they became transgender or the reason why they wanted to change their gender or cause genital mutilation. It all stems to because they face some sort of trauma or some sort of terrible, awful, disgusting behavior that they might have faced when they
mm,
were children, and that traumatic experience basically imprinted on them. And when it imprints, right, what do people do, or what do organisms do when it imprints? They copy
I
it, right? You remember that one episode with Rigby and Regular Show where he adopts the bunch of baby ducks?
yes.
And because he's like the the little manlet, right, in the entire show. And it's funny because you end up appreciating him greater on in the actual series. But the moral of the story behind that one episode, a bunch of baby ducks, is he does not appreciate what the beauty is of human life, right? Those little baby ducks, maybe like little baby kids, right?
Mhm.
And that's the like allegory for it. And then he kept saying step off, and he was trying to act like he was going to use violence against them. And that violence, not only was it kind of funny in the show, but it imprints in the ducks, right? They start copying him and they start attacking other animals, kind of, be like him. And they go, woo, and whatnot. And this type of imprinting, not only does it happen for beneficial effects for, people that are, father to son, but if there's a person out there that is an actual bully or an abuser or whatever, and let's say someone is already, pretty much mentally, unstable, they might have questioned their gender, etc., it only worsens it, right? And then
Mm,
these people are going to be out in the world, and unfortunately, it causes a slippery slope type of theory that people
mhm.
underestimate in society. And I keep saying the word underestimate. I keep saying these things, but the moral of the story is that if you don't focus on it and how these types of layouts work, right, then you don't look at the actual bigger picture, right?
Mm.
It's really really important. For example, we look back at 2008 with Obama when he introduced gay marriage, right? It had a good amount of impact or whatever. People were happy. People were being able to do whatever they wanted. But then it ended up introducing the slippery slope theory of now that gays have their own power, now that they're a minority that's represented in the very upper echelon of American society and government, now transgenders can. Now, people that want to say they want to fake their own race, they also can too. You know what I mean? This brings a slippery, slippery slope that actually is anti what America is. People can
Mm.
become diverse. There's no issue with that. But the issue is when people are able to copy diversity or believe that diversity is their way out of problems.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I could definitely agree with that. And it's actually interesting that you mentioned the split because if you look, a lot of the old school gays, even old school transgender people are kind of against like um the whole iteration of modern transgenderism in the LGBT community. And I mean, I guess you could also cut it down to old people being old people, but when you look at it, it's like they make some valid points. And the fear is too by some gay people, especially in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, is like, oh, well, we don't want all this craziness to end up removing our progress because, you know, we don't want people to just classify gays with transgender people and what all the young kids are doing today. And I I don't know. I just kinda I don't know how this got into transgenderism when we talked about AI, but a very interesting a very interesting conundrum you bring up.
No, 100%. And I think also you bring a very important part where You're mentioning how old school people that were into that type of lifestyle, they basically were saying we should become civilized human beings, keep this in the closet, be able to do whatever we'd like to do, but we don't want to make things degenerate because if we do, we're gonna lose all of this. We're gonna lose all this progress that we made, right? Whether you're Harvey Milk or who's the other guy? The guy who was a famous street artist, Keith Haring, right? Keith Haring also was an amazing artist. He also had a great amount of things that he did as a legacy. He really was just insane in terms of what he did in New York City. People still wear his clothing. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Keith Haring Foundation donates money back to kids, and they also work with Uniqlo, which is that popular Japanese retail supplier. And I think it's pretty cool because these clothing companies, these type of progressive and sort of modern day foundations and groups and societies, not only do they have a good type of message and they're able to work off of what they have, but they don't make their identity the exact focus of what they do.
Yeah,
You
I
would
think
agree on that, right?
is that yeah, no, I agree with
They
that. Is that
they they try to find outlets in society that are able to make people grow, make people nurture themselves, make people feel belonged, but also where they actually obtain a skill, right? Whether it's art, whether it's math, whether it's science, whatever it is, right?
mm,
And I think going back to the topic of AI, since we've already kind of wrapped up this topic, I don't want to become too redundant and whatnot. But considering the topic of AI and how artificial intelligence is not only a type of machine learning, but is able to basically take out the human sentience of things and make it completely human made, right? Because AI is being made by humans. It's only as smart as humans make it, right?
right.
Not only does this become profound to think about how our own collective expression of ourselves is not only a boon to being able to socialize with each other, it was actually a huge drawback because humans nowadays are not being able to be as innovative as they were in the past. If you look at the amount of growth that's happened over the past 20 years, it's actually been dwindling really, really badly. You look at this not only in stocks and equities, but in overseas markets. You also see this in terms of the holdings of some of the richest people in America and in the overseas. One huge statistic that I'll just pull out on you real quick. Between the years of 2000 to 2020, we had an average equity growth. So this is just considering stocks that probably your mom and pop holds, people that regular companies hold. Myself, I also hold stock. Students that are trying to become in finance, et cetera, et cetera. Their average growth rate year over year was 10%. Since the year of 2008, since the year that was the year of Obama's inauguration and whatnot, we've actually had a consistent rate actually dropping, and that 10% has actually now fell as of 2023 to 4%. So the
Wow.
average equity, the average stock now only really averages about like a 4 to maybe maximum 8% profit for the average Joe, the average person living in America. And then you question yourself, you think, you know, is technology really bringing us to an upper echelon of human development and human wealth and being able to not only become better in your own life, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, but being able to afford houses, being able to have a lot of kids, basically being able to grow and nurture your own community just like a tree, right?
Hmm.
We're actually going backwards because artificial intelligence is now saying, okay, humans have gone to such a lazy point in society that we would rather code and rather make something physically, make that our new outlet, and use that instead of making humans understand that these processes are also important for humans to understand and develop and learn. Because without humans being a machine, right? Without humans being able to make themselves become smarter and become more intellectual, right? Then AI only dumbs us down because that becomes the new shortcut to saying, okay, I have a problem or I have a math quiz, right? If the AI quiz can do it for me and show the work, why would I want to do it myself? I can just copy it down. I can just look at it later, right?
That was the problem with online schooling during COVID. A lot of people
Agreed.
graduated
Agreed.
when they shouldn't have graduated because everything was dumbed down and easier. Um, I mean, it's concerning because medical students passed and graduated during 2020. So they shouldn't have been graduated. Some of them, and same thing with
I
biologists,
agree.
chemists. It's very concerning. I agree with you that it is there is a laziness aspect to it. I feel like it might be, we might be heading towards another dark age because even I was sitting here earlier today editing and stuff. I'm like, how much different can we really get? I mean, like, what else can we really make? Because everything too is also profit motive. So what you were mentioning is pretty like egalitarian in the sense that like, how's technology going to help not only productivity but the human spirit develop? And it can't because there's so many corporate elements to this. So I
Agreed.
genuinely don't think that we can push forward until the profit motive is eliminated from technological development. Because if you look at all
I
technological
agree.
development in the 20s, I mean, in the 20th century, we only learned, airplanes were only taken seriously when we figured out we could drop bombs from them. You know,
That's true.
Zeppelins were only taken out of production because they realized bombers could go farther. It's
That's very true.
war also develops things. So when you reference 2000 to 2020, there wasn't, a Cold War anymore. There wasn't a active war. I mean, Afghanistan, I mean, how much technology do you need to blow up a mud hut? I mean, not a lot. So the
I
technological
agree.
development, militarily, while we are seeing cool things like jetpacks and F-35s and F-22s and stealth and all that, you know, we're not seeing the rapid change to the civilian market. How is the civilian market changing? Is it changing with military technology? Because if you look at the Cold War, civilian technology upgraded with military technology. Cell phones became a thing. The internet became a thing. With space travel came satellites. So we had satellite TV while we had satellites observing the Soviet Union. These are things that, happened alongside the growth of military advancement, and now it's just kind of like iPhone 14, the same thing, just a little prettier. Or, like this camera I'm shooting on right now, right? It's a better camera than the DSLR I was using, but like how much better can a camera get before, the processing power can't compute with the computer you're using? So it's just gonna get to the point where it's like I feel like we're at the point now where it's like everything that's been done has been done, and everyone's just kind of afraid to like take that leap of faith or do something different. Because even if you look at content creators, we're all mimicking each other, right? Like, how many people are trying to imitate Joe Rogan? How many people? This is another example, right? How many people
Great point.
buy a van? How many people buy a van, buy a camera, and make a YouTube channel and say, I'm traveling the
Oh
world?
my God!
How?
Remember that one couple, the one that became ground meat? What was it called? Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito.
Oh my fucking God. Oh my God. Oh.
Dude,
Yeah.
it literally proves the point. Humans are becoming more and more unoriginal, and we're becoming more and more geared towards technological dopamine. It's honestly a drug at this point.
It
People want
is.
to have the self validation. They want to be like, oh, I'm living this lifestyle that seems so cool. But then they don't look at the actual behind the scenes. What do you do for a living? What do you do that actually has a profound impact back on society, right? What is the feedback that you provide back to society? For example, one thing that I really enjoy to do that I've probably always done since I was a kid, right? I'll always have religion as being a part of my life.
Mm.
I'm a proud Hindu. I've always been a Hindu since I was very young. I never really gave a shit about anyone that always tried to doubt whatever type of religious affiliation that I came from. I believe that anyone's entitled to any God and that God exists and that God is not only omnipotent in all of our lives, but he made nature, and he who makes nature is not only the Lord of our world, but the Lord of all worlds. And this is one of those things where you were mentioning that civilian innovation and civilian success is widely attributed to, especially in the Western Hemisphere, to the military, right? Military spending, what the military is able to do. We've led ourselves to such good times in society that my friends who even work for military contractors, some of them working for other branches of the government at the moment, they even tell me, explaining that the amount of progress that we currently have in America, it's honestly dumbfounded ourselves because now we've gone to a point where money controls everything and where innovation doesn't have nearly the same amount of respect nor the same amount of motivation that people used to actually have a reverence upon. People used to think, oh, we want to build some of the best, toughest, roughest submarines that are able to, traverse the seven seas and they can go below 5,000, 6,000 feet and they'll be extremely advanced and we could go against Taiwan or whatever, go against China and be able to fend ourselves in this future Taiwan campaign that's going to be coming up. And in reality, we're not even there.
No.
I won't disclose any names, but one of my closest friends, been friends with him for years and years and years and years. We did sport together for a little while as well. He currently works for one of the biggest contractors for submarines to the U.S. Navy. And he was explaining to me that just to make one submarine takes about roughly like 8 to 12 months. And every single time he enters the office and he goes to his office and he does his things, etc., etc., there's probably about a good 2 hours that he spends every single day to spend on break, going to lunch, doing random stuff, and then the regular team of engineers, all paid through U.S. taxpayer dollars that probably your parents and my parents are also paying, they basically going to waste because they're spending let's say they get like a $50 billion contract, right? They're only going to spend about 35 billion, maybe 40 billion on the actual hardware, however they're making. Other 10 billion is going to go to God knows what.
Mm. Oh, embezzlement.
It's going to fill up, politicians' pockets. It's going to fill up the CEO's pockets. It's going to fill up other people's pockets. And then the amount of actual emphasis on being able to make a brand new spanking product or like a brand new design that could actually benefit the military or benefit the government or actually, have some sort of profound impact on like, U.S. defense and U.S. global security. It won't be there because they didn't put in the right percentage of actual effort to expense, right?
Well, we're
You need to
getting
have a good amount
cocky.
of effort. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's what I'm basically trying to reiterate that we don't put in the same amount of effort that we used to, and now the only thing we ever concern ourselves with is just the power of the purse, right? How much
Mm.
money are we going to spend on this? 'Cause everyone's like, oh God, we don't want to spend that much. When it comes to safety, when it comes to being able to arm yourself, when it comes to having massive armaments that we desperately need because the U.S. stockpile is at I believe a 50-year low since this Ukraine war.
Mhm.
It only brings more of emphasis on we should be able to do more as a country, and yet we aren't.
Like, even when you look, I mean, love him or hate him, Trump had some good points when it came to,
Oh, he was based, completely based.
reindustrializing our country. The only thing I didn't like about Trump was not even Trump himself, but like the cultists that were trying to push for Trump, like in a cult sense, like that kind of freaked me out. But like his points were great. Like as a man, like I liked his foreign policy points. And it was incredibly based when he said, "Yeah, we need to like build our own factories and like encourage people to do trades because we need people to run these factories." And I mean, how many people do you know, right? I mean, it's like I went to school with a lot of kids, man, and half of them were not ready for college, and 25% of them were ready, but probably shouldn't have been there, or maybe they could have taken a different route. So it's like 10% of a high school really belonging to a college, and then 90% being kind of left high and dry. I mean, that's not really fair to shit on all these like other things. So when you talk about like, us not trying, it's like we're driving all these kids into college and everyone's coming out with degrees that they're not even fucking using. Like, I quit my job. Like, I left my industry. I opened my own company. So like that's cool. I got something out of like the industry in the sense that like I know that I like what I like, but I got a degree that focused in radio. Radio is a dying industry. Allaccess.com got shut down. It's shutting down in like 2 weeks because there's just no money in radio anymore. So and you know about All Access, right? It's like the
Yeah, of
entertain
course.
yeah, All Access is going out of business, dude. They declared bankruptcy and
It's
they're
depressing.
shutting down. It's depressing, and
It's
it's like
depressing.
and this is the thing too when it comes to like lack of innovation when you're looking at like the radio industry, like they don't know or don't have the willpower to compete with Spotify. They don't have the willpower to compete with podcasters. One of the reasons people like us are so successful is because we can be real. Like we can have this whole discussion about where we veered off to transgenderism and like morals and all this stuff and be completely open and honest and suffer no repercussions from investors or like
Yeah.
advertisers or FCC. I could say fuck you motherfucker and like not get fired because I own all the equipment and there's no law that says I can do that. With radio, you're subject to the FCC. So there's freedom in it and you could say what you want, do what you want, anyone can do it. And radio is made to be like, "Oh my god, you're on radio, like, that's so amazing, like, how did you do that?" You know, it's like this movie magic aspect of the 20th century they're holding on to, and I've said multiple times, I'm like, "Why don't we open up a podcast studio? Why don't we have, like, podcast episodes of the radio show?" So people can play it back and make radio just like the cute little thing in the background, but we actually like, our main money maker is podcast, and they're like, "Nah, nah, we don't wanna go to that route." There's not an emphasis on multimedia, and when there is an emphasis on multimedia production for radio stations, it's usually done pretty badly. Town Square Media. Um, with Town Square Media, they ask all their jocks to write 5 to 10, journalist pieces a week off of their show. And it's like, dude, these aren't journalists, these are jocks. So there's not like there should be a camera, a real camera in every radio station. There should be every corporation should say we are not cooperating with the Federal Communications Commission. It is preventing us from doing business, and just not cooperate with them. They can't. All the equipment isn't provided by the government. The equipment's provided by them. They bought the transmitter. They just pay the government a rent who rent out 1039, 1061 BLI, 99.9 The Star. They're just paying rent. The FCC can't really do anything in most states. And if all the major companies are banding together and saying, nah, we're not doing it, sorry, then the FCC effectively has no power over radio stations. The FCC is the biggest reason that radio couldn't diversify. And even when low power FM licenses came out, right? For community radio stations, they all got bought up by the big corporations. So radio got killed off by that buyout. Radio got killed off because all the small time broadcasters that used to pirate got denied licenses to build radio stations. And this comes back to your point about, you know, lack of innovation. Oh, let's just buy out all these stations and then just simulcast on them instead of giving it to people that could actually breathe new life into the medium and create healthy competition. Because when there's no more markets to expand to, capital shrinks or it has to recolonize itself. So right now, the capital is shrinking because there's no way for them to expand on their traditional medium and their traditional audience. There's no way to bring them in and make more money off of the audiences they already have. That's why radio's failing. And I'm tired of
I agree.
pretending that it's not.
This is a area of communications that is so under talked about because radio has become an overexpanded monopoly that
Mhm.
not only has too much of fed oversight and guidance and whatnot, but the way that radio is seen nowadays, people know that typically boomers, people that might be close to Gen X, whatever it is, Gen X, Y, whatever it is, like everyone before Gen Z essentially, and
Mhm.
millennials you can also count. They also just not really have a passion or emphasis for live radio because radio itself killed itself. Being able to pay these stupidly high rents, having terrible stations like for example where I live in the Hudson Valley, we have this one station called K104. I'm pretty sure you might know what I'm talking about.
Okay, is that Town Square Media?
No, K104 is like this. It's like 104.7 FM or 104.7 AM. They basically just probably advertise the most terrible garbage music. I mean, they get like terrible rap music. They get some really stereotypical country songs on there. They do something called K Fest every single year, which I mean, if you're into it, you're into it. I never really been like a big fan of it because I keep seeing that their audience each year keeps dwindling. More and more and more and more. And people, to be honest with you, would much rather watch something on YouTube, or they would much rather watch favorite comedian talk about the real life world that is really around them. One of the guys that I currently look up to, outside of Ari Shafir, because Ari Shafir is just a hilarious dude. Theo Vaughn, I think Theo Vaughn is one of those guys who's really
He's
crushing it.
good.
He's really killing it, and he's showing that you can just use creative expression, just funny, witty humor, and bring in these interesting, amazing people. But it's being yourself, right, and being honest with yourself. He's uploaded videos himself crying, talking about his past, about his family, talking about how he basically grew up with having a father who basically gave had a kid at age 70. These are things that
Wow.
real humans, right? Real people, real dudes, right? Out there, they have similar situations. They might have a father who might be in his later years of life. They might have a mother who might have breast cancer. They might have a family member who might be going through leukemia. They might have something like that. There's not these emphasis, right? That's led on the common radio, right? On just the what they call the airwaves. There's not regular people out on the airwaves saying, "Hey, listen, right? Come go, come tune in with us because we make actual relatable media." No, no, they
It's
never
all
will.
fake.
They only make it's all fake. It's all about streaming a very very weird audio type of spatial sort of broadcast that's only meant to work in the form of copium, right? Basically coping
Yeah.
and basically opium. This is really a form of copium. People are listening to it. They get like addicted to the format, and they just like that. They like that type of vibe to it, that type of buzz. I never understood it because the kind of radio that exists out there that's on the regular airwaves that's regulated by the FCC, they don't do a good job whatsoever. More and more content creators are realizing I would much rather go under the wing of Google,
Mm.
get a YouTube account, become a YouTube content creator, upload reels or not, no, not reels, YouTube
Shorts.
shorts, and upload videos, right? Because they would much rather get long term passive income coming from that rather than waiting for a stupid radio show that has to do all these other ways to generate just a little bit of revenue, right?
There's no
And
money in
I
it.
think this also brings us agreed. There's absolutely no money. It's awful. And I think also one major thing that also comes out of the whole radio industry and how we're going through a major revitalization of YouTube. There's groups of people out there that are using the same app, which is YouTube, and they're going on this to actually make AI YouTube channels. So this also goes back to our point earlier talking about AI. People are making channels to report on news that's already regurgitated. So let's say, for example, we talk about that one dude that passed away, the really awesome bodybuilder,
Ah, yes.
Joe
Joe
Linder,
Linder.
Joe
Yeah.
Statics, dude, based.
Prosthetics.
Um,
Based.
when he passed away from his aneurysm, I saw about 3 4 AI channels with the same robot voice under some weird channel founded from Lithuania. One I saw from India, one was from Japan, and one was from some who knows where in America. And they're all reporting the same thing, saying Joe Statics has passed away at the age of boop. This is boop boop boop. And I was just like, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, these people have no souls. They're trying to essentially abuse an already great platform that's already helped out a lot of content creators, people that are independently making content. And this is also the proof of what the overreach of AI can really do in the future. People are really going to get dealt damage because, especially even corporations too, to an extent,
Mhm.
they're going to be paying out huge, massive payouts to random shell companies out there that could maybe just do AI alone, and they could just be getting filched, and these AI companies could just be drowning in cash just because they made a seemingly real video, but in reality, it's just a robot talking behind a screen, and some poor sucker out there is watching it. You know,
And it's
this is
no
not just the
different.
overreach of how. Yeah,
It's
it really is no
it's
different.
well, it's no different than a lot of content creators talking about. So remember when the Titanic sub happened, Ocean Gate? Every
Yeah.
single fucking account talked about it, and I didn't talk about it. I was like, well, one, I was with the company. They wouldn't let me talk about news things because I was a journalist. But I stopped working for them, and then I was like, after looking at it, either way, like even if had the liberty to talk about it, I I was like, "Dude, like, everyone's talking about it. Like, I have to make content now that doesn't talk about this, so that way I'm relevant." Because no one wants to hear about fucking Ocean Gate 7 or 8 times in a row when every single TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube video is talking about Ocean Gate. It's like it's not AI, but they might as well be because you remember the critique back in the early 2000s, mid 2013s where they would highlight news stations back to back and it would be the same thing being said over and over again.
Yes,
So
I remember that.
it's literally like the same thing, but now with independent media. So to your point about these platforms being great ways for people to make original content, like it's actually because of capital and because of the money influence behind it, it actually stifles the creative process because people are like, what is the quickest and most efficient way to get famous on YouTube? Be agreeable, talk about what's pertinent, post as much as you can, even if it's garbage. And I don't roll like that. I mean, I do believe that you need frequency, consistency. That's why I try to stream like 5 days a week. But it's every single episode, like I edited an episode last night and it was fucking garbage. I deleted it. I can't tell you how many episodes I've pulled because it either doesn't make a good point or because it sounds like shit. And I'm not going to publish something that's blatantly wrong like Philip DeFranco does on TikTok, where he'll say, like, he said something recently that Russia's threatening South Africa with war. It's like, no, no, they're not actually at all. The point was that if South Africa was forced to follow the International Criminal Court system to arrest Vladimir Putin at his state visit, then that would be declaring war on Russia, and that's something South Africa doesn't want to do. That's what the story was. Philip DeFranco got the wrong thing because he has to make a million fucking 60-second things, so he got the news wrong. So that's my fucking problem. Then AI is only gonna make it worse, like you said, because you get these fucking assholes in Lithuania or Botswana, and they'll make like all this garbage content.
You're 100% right. It's not only make the platforms not only more convoluted, but these types of platforms are going to have to deal with battling incorrect info stream, people just
Yeah.
bringing in completely incorrect info out of the blue, people being able to not only capitalize off of people's deaths, but actually being able to divulge personal information. There's been issues where people actually, the tabloids, TMZ, et cetera, they actually become too overbearing and they actually start to do things such as leak people's addresses, leak people's
Really?
personal information, leak people's phone numbers, yeah. And you can get into really bad lawsuits when you start to realize that privacy is not only one of those things where you need to respect it to a certain extent, but if you leak it out in a certain way, it can be perceived as an attack, right? A verbal
Hmm.
attack onto someone using technology. And one major thing that really comes out of this, especially just talking about how it's really becoming convoluted and how different nations are going to be coming into it and like whatnot, it kind of shows the drawback of diversity, not only in the content creation world, but just in how we receive our overall information. Right?
What do
You
you
look
mean?
at mainstream media. Like for example, I'll just give you an example. Mainstream media, right? It's at its all-time low, right? So people look
Hmm.
at the diverse amount of sources. There's always been that one thing that everyone talks about. They're like, always fact check your sources and make sure you look at the right sources whenever you want to gather information or whenever you want to gather information for a research paper, editorial, etc. Whatever it
Hmm.
is, right?
Right.
And people forget that most of these mainstream medias, most of these, outlets, whatever they end up being, they all have major, trust funds or major group of people that are just backing it purely financially. And
Mm.
then when you see these major platforms get put under the heat, for example, when we saw Meta Platforms, which was formerly Facebook, during
Yes.
the Trump presidency, they basically outright denied that they were getting, straight up like ads for anything, and they weren't fact checking anything. They didn't have a proper content, like ad sponsor system where they were checking whether or not the information was legitimate or not. And when they got put under the heat, Mark Zuckerberg just did his traditional NPC face. He said, "Oh, on my honor, blah blah blah," and he said, "Oh no, it was not our responsibility. We just got paid the money." And then meanwhile, you look at other people that are out there, for example, on YouTube, on smaller types of content creation such as Rumble, Discord, stuff like that. When they run into a situation like that where they might have had a little bit of misinformation, they might have ran into a non-credible source, stuff like that. They get more severely attacked versus the man who might have led a huge corporate giant empire.
Oh
You know
yeah,
what I
well
mean?
it's legacy media versus small media. So there's more
It's true.
scrutiny placed on someone like me spouting stuff off than Jesse Waters on Fox News or Tucker Carlson either. Oh, he made a mistake, he's a busy guy, but if I make a mistake, I'm the problem. Um so when it comes also to like I would disagree that I don't think diversity in media is a bad thing. I think having a
No,
lot
I'm
of
more talking
choices.
about like the diversity of media sources. This is what I'm really talking
Well,
about.
I don't have a problem with that either because the legacy media companies are really owned by like the same people. It's really not
Right.
a like it's not as diverse as people think where you have CNN or Fox News being different. They're kind of along the same line. Really where the problem comes in is when it like small time podcasters and stuff, there's just so much volume of other people that drown it out. So you have to compete. So I'd say I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I really think it's a competition. And I think podcasting is a whole, while it can reach a national and even international audience, I think that there's so many of them that are within reach that it's kind of like how radio used to be, where there was thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of jocks all over the place around the country,
That's true.
but and around the world really, but you just never got to listen to them because your antenna didn't go that far. Now I think we're just realizing that all these people exist for different things, and now you have to compete within your own genre and with your own peers outside of it for people's attention. So I don't think that like me personally, I don't think having the array of choice is bad. I just think that it can be confusing for people because they can get their information from so many different places. But that could also be a good thing because it allows more people to get different perspectives. It only is a bad thing if people are like copying each other and trying to be like the mainstream news.
Oh, for sure. That's definitely where it becomes bad. And you also have, content creators just blatantly copying others, right? You see this huge, really bad NPC move. It's going all over YouTube. I think it's one of the worst things out there.
Yo, can I
And
interrupt you real
I think
quick? What?
people should definitely. Yo, what's up?
Yo, so there's like this fan going on. Like, what is that?
Ah, that's my ceiling fan
Can you
up on the
please,
top. Sorry,
yeah, can you please turn that off?
I got you. It's gonna be already
Thank
be
you.
sweating. Like, give me 1 second.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, no, I was just like it goes on and off, but it just got louder and louder. Um, but continue your point. I'm sorry, brother. You there? Well, while the good man's getting his fan set up, I do agree that you know,
That's probably better, right?
now it is, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so I think the only other fan that runs is actually the fan off of my desktop. I'm actually not able to go turn that off
Yeah,
because
no,
I
that's
have something
fine.
running on there right now for an update. But thing that I want to say was when it comes to the topic of what we were talking about earlier, even going back to AI and talking about how people are becoming more like NPCs, they're lacking devoid of emotion, they're
Mm,
lacking devoid of real human sentience. This current trend of react videos, people saying, "Oh, let me react to this music video that this artist who makes really generic music has been making for the hundreds of years, or no, sorry, not hundreds of years, for decades. Oh, let's just review this out of the blue." And then they just expect to make a living off of that, just reacting to random videos. That
yeah,
is
I hate that
probably
shit.
one of the most cowardly, most pathetic ways to become a content creator. The reason why I'll always say that, the reason why I'll always respect a real, authentic podcaster, no matter how many views he gets, is because a real podcaster will talk about real things, have a proper segment, have content organization, and deliver a beginning, plot, and an end to whatever type of podcast or type of program or content you're trying to make. When it comes to React video, they're very open ended, which I get. People make their own money off of it. You do you. But when you see it, constantly being done over and over and over again, you can't help but just want to call it out and just be like, dude, like, why do you gotta react? Like, why can't you do something else? Like, do a water balloon fight with your cousin or something, or like play a prank. Like, make something good if you're gonna cultivate tons of subscribers and have a great life and a successful life and whatnot, right? I think human agency and being able to do whatever we want, right? It's such a cool thing because we can do whatever we want. We can wake up in the morning in our boxers and eat French toast.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, we also think, oh, why not just live a lazy, degenerate life and just react to YouTube videos for a living, and then just live a mediocre life based off of that, and then expect our kids to also have a normal life because of that? No,
And
that's not how it works.
and this kind of goes back to when everyone wanted a YouTube channel or a website back in the early 2000s to the 2010s. And it just kind of like it just blows my mind because like we still haven't progressed past that. People are still trying to do like that stupid shit where it bro, can you do push the talk?
Yeah, I got you, my bad.
Thanks, bro. You know, so basically when it comes down to it, I really I think that like we haven't progressed past that. Like this what we're seeing now with these React channels and with like the soulless amount of content is that like people are just doing it to do because it's a quick way to make money. They're not trying to appreciate like the artistic end of it. Like for me, this is expressive to me. I format this show to be a loose talk show because that's how I operate. I don't produce my best content when something is structured and scripted. I go in with like a general idea and we just let the conversation flow without getting too off topic and then we bring it back. So like if the topic is about puppies and we're talking about the Iraq war, we can't talk about the Iraq war for the whole thing, but we have to kind of try and like rope it back into the main topic. So like there's like some podcasts go on like a schizo rant, and that's cool too. I like my a good old schizo rant. That's just not how like I create things. Um,
Agreed, baby. Like, we could talk about burning car batteries in the ocean, and then we could talk about how we want to save the ocean at the same time, right?
yeah,
And it's just one
exactly.
of those beautiful things that just comes out of being a human, right? We have these crazy things that we want to endear and adore in our regular life. Other things where it's like, damn, I just hate society. I just want to go on a highway and
Ted
just
Kaczynski.
TP everything, you know. I just want
Yeah.
to I just want to blow up a highway, something like that,
What the fuck? Yo,
it's just so
FBI, we
funny.
ain't
It's
we
just
in it.
so funny seeing people's this dichotomy of regular society where people are able to live a regular life and just constantly adhere to the regular day to day, live the regular job, do whatever, and then you talk to them outside of work, and some things sound completely ironic, but given if the time, situation, setting, and other things worked out perfectly in their favor, who knows if they would actually do the opposite, right?
Exactly. And I think that, when people don't take advantage of their agency and they just like look at the dollar sign, they get rid of like something that could be beautiful. So like, if you're gonna get into content creation, it should be something that's like fun. Like how many video game streamers are there and how many like, you know, how many, e-girls are there that are, flashing their titties on Twitch, bro? And like how many how many people are there that are like Andrew Tate-esque or Joe Rogan-esque where they try to like copy them. It's like, dude, you can't copy them. They already did it because they were them. Like, regardless of what you think of them, they were unique in their approach and there's a reason they're a household name. And there's even like Theo Vaughn. There's a reason he does him. Call her daddy. There's a reason that's that. Barstool Sports. They all have like their unique quirk to the show because they're just being real and being themselves, and they have a good marketing technique. But a lot of these guys too, they'll try to like I'll see people, man, like they'll produce podcasts and it looks like garbage. It sounds like garbage. It's the same fucking thing. It's just an empty conversation where people are just talking about like, oh, this is the newest project I put out now, bro, and blah 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 blah. And they just talk about the like a product someone's produced. It's like an infomercial, and people are unironically creating infomercials and creating products and services that are based around another product and service. And they're not actually tapping into the humanity of it. Like what we're talking about right now is like serious critiques of society that normally if we put this on Facebook, we'd either get banned or someone would scream and yell at us. With this, it allows us to have a platform where we could actively talk about these subjects without fear of reprisal.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with you on that. And I think one major thing that you also mentioned is that we'll have our own quirks, we'll have our own style, we'll have our own swagger. We dictate our swagger is how we are as human beings, not just on the screen, but as people, right? We need to
Yeah.
be transparent at the mirror, right? The exact type of reflection that you put into the mirror is what you should be when people see you, right?
Yeah, you
That,
shouldn't
that
use
that's
filters.
and that's also true. It's crazy. People use these filters like nuts. But also, one major thing is that when we talk about being a podcast guy, being able to talk about discussions and be able to just get into the nitty gritty of things. One thing that I remember when I was super young was we had something that I don't know if they really do anymore when at this age because of technology. When we were younger, we did a lot of brainstorming. I think that's why I'm probably so active now, even when I'm older.
Mm.
And just brainstorming and able to just think about ideas out loud, talk about them with people, just be able to just keep it as organic and as real as possible. It gets the like good out of you, like really, it
Mm.
really gets the best out of you because you really think, right? You look at some of your favorite idols. One of my favorite bands, the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yes.
I love them so much because when they talk about the way that they work together as a band, they literally mention how we were just a bunch of poor guys that just came from California and well, actually, no, they weren't from California. They all came from different areas. Some of them were actually transplants. So I believe one of them came from like Michigan. And they all went to California at the end, just to unite and whatnot. But when it came to being able to make quality music, they worked off of being organic, being able to just shoot ideas out in the blue and then work off of that and not critique each other, right? Like being able to be like, all right, I'll critique you if something is really weird or like really stupid, like if you think you're shitting me or something like that. But
Mm.
if we have something musical we're making, we're focusing on that music at that, at that exact time. If we have
Right.
this topic, or we're gonna be focusing on that exact topic at that exact time.
And
I
that's the
would
best way
say,
to
and I would
create.
probably argue, no, that I definitely agree. I would also argue that nowadays, when it comes to these major podcasters, I look at Nelk for example, right?
Mm.
Did you hear recently about their recent fiasco with Andrew Schulz?
No, I didn't. What happened?
All right, so I'll give you the quick little breakdown. You know the one Jewish guy on there, Steinberg.
No, I don't. I only know about Nelk Boys as a name and that they fuck around too much, but that's about it.
So the Nelk boys, they have a podcast called the Full Send Podcast,
Okay.
and as we know, it's comprised of the main guys. We have Kyle, Forgiard. We have Steinberg, aka the dude, whose literal father is the Nelk LLC's lawyer.
Wow.
And he actually his father actually got threatened by his son to actually put him on the show. Otherwise, he was going to leak all of his father's legal documents, which is really dick move. So that's why he's actually
Uh,
a person on that podcast, which is just really stupid. Aaron Steinberg from Colorado, and then we
Oh,
have our other guy over there, Bradley Martin, who comes on, time to time. Anyways, they had a podcast recently, and it was actually back in the end of 2022. It was with this guy named Andrew Schulz. I don't know if you know. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Famous
no.
comedian. So he's a comedian, comes from New York. I think he was born in Long Island.
Hmm.
Super cool white dude. Talks about funny things. He has this type of podcast. Can't remember what it's called. It's called like Side Talk or something.
Oh,
But it's
Side
like
Talk New York City. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no, it's not Side Talk. I don't remember what it's called.
Oh,
He had some sort of podcast. I'll probably search up the name later. But him and this Indian dude called Akash Singh. So they have their own podcast and whatnot, and they bring in people that come on the show and whatever and whatever. And Nelk Full Sign Podcast, got Andrew Schulz on the show. And halfway through the podcast, Mr. Steinberg, Mr. Steiny as they call him, the Jew, he goes rudely, very He's very very rude, doing this. He just goes on his phone in the middle of a podcast, like with a guest there.
wow.
Like really, like you're gonna interrupt a dude who took time out of his own day, time out of his own schedule for what he does, making content, making sketches, making skits, basically making content, original content. You're gonna just waste this guy's time and be on your phone and text some random girl from the gym that doesn't even know you.
Oh,
And Andrew Schulz saw that, and he just made him the laughing stock of the entire podcast because this man basically lacked having any sort of care for the topic, basically making any sort of segment, and having any human feeling towards the actual person that they invited. That person took time out of their own day, right, to come onto the show. After I had seen that, I had thought of myself. I really thought of myself really deep, like within myself. I thought, I do a lot of things to make a living, to make money, to basically be a hustler in a sense.
right.
And to see people on the upper echelon of society to just kind of
The lack
disregard
of
others,
respect.
complete lack of respect. And the fact that he was also just focusing on more the material aspects of what he was talking to with Andrew Schulz. Like he interrupted him a couple of times and he said, "Oh, how much did you spend on that diamond ring for your wife? Yeah, could you disclose the price? Oh, how much did you spend on that nice gold watch that you have on your wrist? Yeah, yeah." And one of the questions when Andrew Schulz basically felt like he was kind of getting like coaxed or kind of bullied in a sense
Hmm.
to answer one of the questions. You don't really have to. I mean, at the end of the day, you're really not obligated to answer a question. But he said it because he wanted to see what Steiny was up to. He was like, "Yeah, this watch cost me about $73,000." He's like, "Because I just said that, I'm never gonna wear it again now because I just talked to you." I laughed so
Really?
hard because I was like, "Yeah, I mean, it was so funny because seeing Andrew just kind of pull off like a sort of passive aggressive move like that, thought it was necessary because some people out there will divulge more information than they have to,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's not even by their own choice. It's because they have to satisfy the audience, but they
Right.
also know that sometimes the audience that's physically there in that room isn't even representative of what the actual audience is.
Right.
And
Like
seeing a
most of
character
us would
like
be
Shoals
appalled by that.
just answer that just out of the blue, very blatantly, very honestly,
Hmm.
and being able to bring it back to what he was talking about earlier and ignore this little runty guy just trying to, act like he's the complete big shot. That was very profound. It just showed that the podcasting world really needs leaders, it needs people who are really like substance, who are nuanced, who really know what they're doing, and to basically make those nuanced people take over the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way it's gonna survive too, or it's gonna be like radio. Because the reason people don't listen to radio is because it's garbage and there's commercials all over the place. It kind of
True.
actually you mentioned something earlier where before the Nelk conversation with filters. And that's something I wanted to talk about too, where I feel like a lot of this body dysmorphia stuff has always been like a problem in our society since like the 90s with like, fashion magazines and movies and stuff. But like with filters, I feel like it's taken it to another level where you can actually change the physical appearance of your body and then put that on the internet. I think it kind of feeds into the whole like aspect of fakeness that we're seeing, especially like it emphasizes the materialistic and fakeness aspect that's been existent in our society in the late part of the 20th century and takes it to a new level. And I feel like that's kind of like the transgenderism thing fits into that because I feel like that's an extension of alienation that we see under capitalism, where people feel so alienated from themselves and their community that they feel they have to change even their entire gender and their identity to have belonging.
Yeah, I have to definitely say you bring up a really great point about that. It's almost as if people don't feel connected to their own society, and as if they
Mm,
want to. essentially desegment or kind of like fragmentalize themselves away from ever being part of it again because they face one type of trauma and they think, oh, because I face this, I never want to face this again. And then they get that, like fear, right?
Right.
What I call it is I'll always call it fight or flight.
Mm.
One major thing that I've always done since I was really, really young, and I don't know, well, not really young, I mean, want to consider 16, 17, you're super young. I've always had a passion for cliff diving. It's one of my favorite
Fire.
adrenaline sports, if you really want to call it. I'm a pretty big guy, as you can tell from my Instagram pictures. But one of my favorite things is honestly going cliff diving. Going into cold water off of a natural rock formation, just enjoying that, type of thrill, right? And when you encounter people that come from all over the world, when you talk to them, especially because I've already graduated college. I'm already in the workforce, and I talk to a probably say a decent variety of people throughout the day. Um, when you talk to people about things like high adrenaline sports, being able to be out there, do things that are out of the norm, it's like they look at you like a deer in headlights.
Yes. I
You
feel you on
know,
that. I
you know,
feel
it's
that
it's
when I
almost it's
do
almost
stuff.
as if like these things that you're bringing out of them is like come from a completely different universe. Like
It's threatening.
they don't even know. They're like, yeah, it's almost as if they feel threatened by it sometimes too.
I feel that way. I can't tell you how many people, like, even when I started my show, like my podcast, they'd be like, "Oh, you're a little podcaster." They'd kind of grill me a little bit, like, "What's it about? Why do you do this?" And, I just feel like I don't fit in a box like when I do shit. So I'm not a quantifiable being. Like I go hunting, fishing, shooting, and I do tarot reading and I believe in numerology and I have stuffed animals and I like World War II and I wear funky clothing and I
Peace.
skateboard. Yeah, like I don't have a base like a set, thing. Like I'm not just the gym bro. I lift weights and I like vanilla ice cream and I do whatever the fuck I want.
Oh,
I
vanilla's
read books.
best.
Vanilla is the best ice cream. I'm tired of pretending it's not. Um Only if it's soft serve though. If it's anything else, it's mint chip or cookie dough. But I
Yes, yes, 100% agree,
yeah.
dude. 100% agree.
See, you're Giga Chad based for that. But I
Dude,
just
mint chip is probably the first flavor I ever liked, but when it comes to local upstate New York creameries, I
mm,
always go with chocolate chip cookie dough. Reason why is because they use like that really good like super thick like vanilla ice cream, and they throw that like freshly made cookie dough in there, like that their grandma made, like that old recipe. Like she put in her love, put in the chocolate chips, she put in like a little kiss on the chocolate chips in there, and then she just threw it in there, and she put a little bit of like melted butter, like, and then you eat that, dude. Like, dude, you feel the happiness, you feel like the thrill just going through. You're like,
that's
this
why
is
I like
beautiful.
upstate so much, man. Like there's soul to it. You're not gonna get asked how much is your
Dude,
watch
if you
when
ever
you're up
come here,
there.
bro, I will treat you to a brewery, bro.
Bro,
Bring
I
bring out a girl here. We'll
appreciate you.
definitely do like a double date type of thing.
That would be fire. I'm so with that. I used to go to school at Oneonta, so I love it up there. And
Oh,
I got
dude, Onion is awesome.
oh, it's so sick. I fucking love it, man. I what's funny is I thought you were another kid from Oneonta that I knew, and I'm like, yo, why is he fucking with my podcast? I thought he hated me, but then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't him. This is a different dude. Um, so I appreciate you randomly finding my show over the last like couple of years because I realized that you used to like my posts a lot too back when I started. You followed me back in the pandemic, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My man's been a fan since the Great Panini. Um, but I like how up there, you're not like like you're not gonna get asked about a $75,000 watch. You're not gonna be like, "Where'd you get the watch?" People are just gonna be like, "Oh, nice watch." It's more human up there, I feel. There's less societal pressure to fit in or be a specific person than, downstate is. Um and I also feel like a lot of our society where, stuff that we're talking about is very cosmopolitan and has more effect. Not that it doesn't affect rural areas, but I feel like it strongly impacts, urban areas and suburban areas more than rural areas.
That I would definitely agree with. I think it definitely has to go back to the idea of materialism and what we hold
Mm,
true. Else, when you enter rural areas, when you enter areas that are much more widespread, where it's more open land, people enjoy nature, people really enjoy the true intrinsic value of what God already made, right? You
mm,
see a different emphasis on the way of life. People live based more upon the quality of life and about how they're able to enjoy the surroundings around them and protect those surroundings versus thinking, oh, I just want to live for the weekend and just drink margaritas and eat all this pizza, and then afterwards we'll just get stupidly figgity fucked up, and then we'll just live for the next weekend. Like, no, it's about having a purpose, about being nuanced, about having substance, about making something bigger than yourself, right? One
Mm.
cool thing that I've seen that's really interesting between Long Island and I say like upstate New York is like we have that emphasis on tradition, and people are gonna say, "Oh no, you guys are all racist. You guys are it's on land, and yeah, yeah, yeah. You guys are nothing like New York City." First of all, lady, you gotta understand Long Island and upstate New York, like Orange County, Rockland County, Ulster County, Sullivan County, which is one of my favorites if you go there for the nature aspect of it.
Yeah.
These counties all hold tradition. They all have things that they'll always take into account and love. For example, dairy farming, right? The
Mm.
area of India that my father is from, when he grew up, he had two cows and he used to be a dairy farmer. And that's why people look at us differently when they're like, "Oh, why are you brown and drink milk?" Or like, "Why do you love animals and cows so much?" I'm like, the reason why I love cows so much is because it's in my blood. Like we
The
literally took
sacred
care of these
animal.
suckers. Sacred animal, dude, 100%. I mean, I'll still eat, grass-fed meat. I'm not gonna lie to you. As long as the animal is humanely butchered, I don't really care, right?
Right.
But it's one of those things where it's like, I love these animals. I love these organisms. I want to take care of them. I want to see them nurture. I want them to have the same type of life path, just like me, right? They're gonna be on this earth to reproduce. They're gonna be on this earth to descend, right? To descend upon, some sort of family, right? Get a bunch of love and then produce offspring. One cool thing that I've seen between both of these areas, Long Island and upstate New York, is we'll always have that type of background behind us, that type of backbone. If you go to downstate, just the entirety of it, the closer and closer you get to New York City within that 45-minute to 50-minute type of span, like very close to it, it's
Mm.
soulless. It's
Yep.
like an absolute industrial wasteland. There's absolutely no soul there. People there are just working to just exist, and it's really awful because those people that are living in that type of society, they don't enrich the society. They only make it worse. They only make it worse and worse and worse. People are going to say, "Oh, but isn't New York City an area, a huge hub of innovation? Isn't it the capital of the world?" Well, I do have to admit to you there is a lot of great things about New York City. You can get great pizza. You can get stabbed in the subway. You can see diversity up close. But it's also has had a lot of drawbacks because within urban societies, you even look at Rome, you look at New York City, they have this type of similarity where the type of freedom and the type of non-required obligations that are emphasized in society end up leading to a downfall because people have basically less and less of a care for the surroundings around them because they don't care for it. They just think, oh, someone already made this before me. Why should I have to care, right?
Right.
Versus when you go to upstate or when you go to Long Island, you see beautiful areas, just beautiful nature areas. You go to Nassau. You go to as you were saying, Yaphank, which is a really really nice area. The area where I go cliff diving, which is literally called Sundown, bro. Sundown, New York.
Oh.
It's the OG sundown town of New York. I swear to God, bro. And yet, if you tell this to a person who's more liberal or more a little bit more like, oh, I want everyone to be equal, they're gonna be like, what? Go to a sundown town to go? That is so crazy. You're like a redneck. No, I'm not a
Yeah.
redneck. I just appreciate nature. I take care of it, and I would much rather take care of the nature versus you who will never have that same appreciation type of thing.
Because they're not
If
around it.
you kind of yeah, that's true. They're not around it. They've never had the appreciation for it. They've never understood what it means to be in nature. When I was younger, back in my Boy Scout days, every summer I would go into upstate in Sullivan County, about 20 minutes away from where I go cliff diving,
Mm.
near the Rondout Reservoir, to go to Camp Rennequa. So that was like near the 10 Mile River Reservation area, all former Native American land. Sorry, Native Americans, you guys got
Ah.
BTFO'd. But
BTF.
but to be honest with you, the people who really work on that land, they really take care of it, bro. Like they really love it. We as scouts, we always made sure that we took care of the land around us.
Mm.
Overfishing is not allowed there. Eagles have their own preserve there, like the like Great American Eagle I'm talking about.
Nice.
It's beautiful. I mean, there's just it's like a slice of heaven just situated where New York State is, and because of the tradition and because people care more about that quality of life, things will stay the same. If you try to say the same for New York City, no way. You see
Yeah,
a
there's no
building,
shot.
it's owned by three different Jews in the same year. I mean, it's
Oh,
absolutely
Jesus.
awful.
Well, I mean, it's also like if shit goes wrong, like no one cares. Like if someone like gets killed on a subway, like people will actually get mad. So, like I got late for work, like you made me late for work for killing. Like you couldn't be considerate and like shoot yourself or like overdose. You had to jump in front of the
Yeah, like
train.
you couldn't have
Like
just decided to just walk that day. You could have decided
yeah.
to just hijack one of those stupid Citibank bikes. I mean, just taking off some random dude doing DoorDash.
Well, you couldn't just jump off the George Washington? I mean, like what the fuck, dude? Like that's how they are. They're fucking mean. They're
You're not even
horrible.
joking about that too.
I'm not.
You're not
There
even joking about it because
there's a
these people
guy.
are nuts. They would much rather cause a ruckus on a subway for 30, 40 minutes involving their actual life and the lives of other people around them versus making something out of themselves or just offing themselves at that point.
Literally. And like here's the thing too, like there's a to emphasize this point, guys, Louis Barbash on TikTok, he made a real a meme about this. There are people in the comments that were unironically saying, "Yeah, that would be me if that happened to me when I was coming home. If I had to wait 2 hours to scrape off your body, I would be mad." Like there are people that actually believe this, and it's disturbing that it's being celebrated. So those comments have hundreds, if not thousands, of likes, and
Yep.
that means all these people are agreeing with it, and
It's
that
insane.
scares the shit out of me.
They're
It's
they're
insane.
they are part of the copium vacuum hole. It is honestly destroying American sentiment. People just think, oh, some terrible thing happened at face value. Instead of investigating all of the characteristics behind why the situation happened, I'm just gonna react with this shock appeal. Oh no, he just passed away. Oh no,
School
oh no,
shootings.
stop, stop. Yeah,
No
dude.
one cares about
Imagine
school
if that happened to
shootings.
you. You'd be crying your ass off. That's why people underestimate these things until the day they have to hire an insanely expensive lawyer, and then they realize, oh God, I just realized that I live in one of the most free countries, but it's honestly too free to a too large extent. Because anyone can sue anyone, and anyone can get mad at anyone, and incur an insane federal investigation out of nowhere. Or a city, what is it called? DA investigation. When New York City investigated what's his name? Jordan, what was it? Daniel Penny, if I'm mistaken.
Yes, 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 yes. They did. They
Daniel
investigated.
Penny. I forgot the other guy's name. Jordan, Michael Jackson, Dollar Store Michael Jackson, whatever his name was. Dollar Store Michael Jackson passed away, and he got BTFO'd because he did a terrible thing at the wrong time, and now he's gone. He got his
Yeah.
pack smoked, unfortunately.
His
I'll never say it's because of his demographic or because of where he came from, but because of what he was doing to endanger innocent people on the subway, unfortunately, he passed away. And I thought it was honestly justified. People may think that's a little bit too extreme. Who I think, oh, you're sadistic for even thinking about that. If you were stuck on an island and there was 10 people on the island and one guy was a former homeless guy or a former drug addict and the only thing he knows is having a rush of dopamine and he goes into tribal or primitive instincts. So let's say he was a crystal meth addict, right? Because
Okay.
we could talk about how these crystal meth tweakers do anything. They could kill people, right?
Right.
Let's say you're on an island with 10 people and it's a crystal meth person on there as well. That one crystal meth guy, addict, is saying, I'm gonna kill everyone unless they get me crack, or whatever, they get me meth, whatever the fuck it is, right? If
Right.
you're the one dude there, you're the only dude there that might have military knowledge to actually, take out someone. Wouldn't the right thing to do if this guy is verbally and trying to physically assault people to just take him out, to just neutralize the threat?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the guy's trying to kill you. I mean, like, what
Because
the
I would
fuck?
much rather save 9 individuals, right, and take out one person versus letting this one guy cause a whole anarchy, right?
I mean, this everyone's saying go get a social worker. All right, yeah, let's stop the fucking subway and call a
Yeah,
social
go
worker.
get
I
go
mean,
get go get Yolanda, the 450-pound whale who works in the social working friggin' sub to go do the work. Oh, honey, don't hurt me. Oh, psh, psh, get stabbed like 17 times. Like,
yeah, that's
dude,
what
really?
happens to
Like,
all
come
these
on.
social. That's why they dropped the social worker thing too, because they're all getting fucking stabbed and like jumped and shit. If you remember that
Yep,
during
that's why
the
social workers are trying to now work actually from a lot of them are trying to work now from home or trying to work remote or hybrid because they don't want to have to deal with this type of stuff in person. They don't want to
no,
get stabbed. They don't want to risk their own lives doing something as simple as encouraging religion, as literally making sandwiches or people in a homeless shelter while getting paid for it. Like if it involves their life and if they're scared because they're very true to themselves and they're really faith oriented and they have values and morals that they appreciated, but unfortunately the people around them can't appreciate that, then I don't blame them for not wanting to go be in person because it doesn't align with their values. Risking your own life to earn a little bit of money is never worth it.
no, I totally agree with you on that. And I've had to make calls like that in the past where I was like, oh, this is destroying my quality of life. But, you know, I mean, you look at it from the aspect of the Daniel Penny thing. Look, man, like I think that, and that I think that whole thing got dropped too because it's like they were like, dude, it's totally justified. Listen, this is coming from, you know, Alvin Bragg's Manhattan, where he put a store owner in prison for defending himself from an attacker. I mean, the world doesn't make sense anymore. But what I will say
100%.
is, what I will say is, we are over. We are doing our. We have been going at this for almost an hour and a half. So I do have to get going. But it was a pleasure having you on. And if you
Oh,
want to
for
plug your
sure. But I
socials,
actually just want to wrap up one thing. Actually,
yeah.
I actually did notice about like 4 hours ago a new article came out regarding that guy Daniel Penny, aka
Oh,
the the really base dude who did what he had to do, and he completely felt that he was justified, and I don't really blame him for feeling that way because if you look at the entire video footage, where it's public for anyone to see, people can see the entire situation unfolding from point A to point Z.
right.
It's one of those things where if you look at it in this society, in this current political agenda that we're currently not only existing within, but we're also having surround us and engulf us, it keeps trying to perpetuate the victim mindset not only from a person aspect, but from trying to target one group of people as being quote unquote more marginalized over another. I will never end up in a positive type of result or a positive quotient. You want to say that when things are divided or people are divided, because it only involves more divisions,
Right.
and it'll only make people feel more and more further separated from each other, rather than actually being able to be like, oh, listen, you're from a different background, but I won't look at you from a different background. I'll look at you based on your personality, where you're from, what kind of morals you like, what kind of music you listen to, favorite ice cream, most importantly.
Yeah.
I will be honest with you. I will always judge someone based on the type of ice cream that they prefer.
That's a very fair assessment. But I agree with you,
Yeah,
man.
man.
I judge people more on the content of their character than the color of their skin. I think Martin Luther King said that. BTFO
Sure.
Wogies.
Yo, I mean, one of my favorite musicians of all time, Frank Sinatra, literally had a group, the whole Rat Pack, and at
Hmm.
one point he was like the only dude that was Italian making music with colored musicians, Louis
Really.
Armstrong, and yeah, and no
He
one
was an
was saying anything.
anti-racist too.
Everyone was just like, he was really anti-racist, one of the coolest dudes out there. He was also anti a lot of this overreach of women stuff that's happening right now. This terrible misandry that's being pushed, unfortunately, by third wave feminists. And he was really nuanced, proper guy, really old school guy. But he was so old school to the point that he was true to himself.
Mm,
How many men can you say nowadays are true to themselves at that extent?
not a lot, dude.
In my
Not a lot
opinion,
of them.
this is my view. I can probably say two people: my father
Yeah.
and my uncle. Actually, no. I'll correct myself on that. My brother, who's an anesthesiologist, and my father.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's a small amount of men, dude. It's really a small amount of men. They're usually older dudes. But yo, we really got to wrap
Yeah,
this up. So let me know. So
100%.
where can people find you? Where can they find your content and all that?
Yeah, of course. So you can always follow me on Instagram, Talisman Dean, or if you ever have the chance, you're also able to look me up at any time on Spotify, all music platforms. Raja Deen. I'm looking forward to upload a new tape within, I believe, the next couple of months. Currently still working out a couple of beats. I've been doing a lot of workflow at the moment, in coding, and
Nice.
basically kind of just getting myself a little bit more out there in terms of like the real world, kind of getting more of my career out there and whatnot. Money has never really been an issue for me, but I've always been the type of person to want to learn, to want to understand new things, discover, etc. And I honestly believe that given the certain world that we live in right now, with web development, with AI, with everything out there, please, for anyone that's streaming right now, understand everything out there is not meant to scare you, but it's meant to educate you, right?
Mm,
The world that we live in is a world that's fruitful. It's really really bountiful, and you can learn so many things out there. You can learn coding. You can learn how to become the best damn teacher in the world. You can become a doctor. You can become anything in this world. Make sure you understand you must have a thirst for knowledge, and you must quench that thirst for knowledge. Otherwise, you'll never become a proper human being. Human beings are people that strive for perfection, and they also unfortunately strive for failure too. That's
mm.
why we have something called trial and error, right?
Yeah, human experimentation, baby. Hey man, thanks for coming on
Yeah,
and
guys,
to
Raja
our
Deen, all platforms. Remember that.
Raja Deen. Hey, listen guys, thank you again for listening to episode 251. See you guys for a special live stream tomorrow night at 10 p.m. on Saturday. And remember, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. live streams, baby. Until next time.